Hey everyone, Uber Carshare is shutting down. Let's take a look, see what's happening in this industry. The last couple of years in Australia, Uber Carshare has been fairly flat, around 20,000 or so organic visitors a month. The niche and category that they play in is kind of interesting. This sort of car sharing, borrow your neighbour's car next door. It's not a huge area in terms of search demand and how much people are actually looking for this. I mean, there's 15,000 searches a month in total there. Car sharing, Brisbane, Perth, Adelaide, a couple of other, location-based keywords there. But all in all, car share as a concept is not something that people are hugely searching for. So if we go and see what keywords are actually driving traffic to Uber Car Share, you can see some legacy stuff from Car Next Door, which is the company that they originally acquired and rebranded as Uber Car Share, basically. A few branded sort of things, van rental, car hire, some generic high-level terms like that. If we filter that down into the actual sort of relevant non-branded things that I'd be looking at to gauge this market size, so get rid of their sort of branded terms, Car Next Door and Uber, add in, rent, rental, hire, anything along those lines. You can see a fair bit of substantial volume, plenty of keywords with many thousands of searches a month, all very much location-based, Brisbane, Melbourne, Perth, things like that. Something interesting to note as well, I'm not going to go into it in detail, but they obviously did change some URL structures around about March this year, going from just /car rental Brisbane to adding in an AUEN subfolder path, probably part of a more international approach there. But again, interesting to me that performance was fairly stable up until that point. And then since that changeover, you've got a lot of fluctuation there and underperformance relative to where they were. So again, not a full deep dive, but potentially hints that something major changed from a code perspective and Google hasn't liked it as much since then. Those sort of keywords and terms, car hire Sydney, car rental Sydney. Part of this I'll get to later, but there's a bit of a, distinction between the two that they're obviously trying to address both of those sort of terms or options in key headings and sections on the pages. You can see obviously a sort of strategy of different regions or links off of that as well. Bit of comparison stuff, how much they cost versus competitors as their sort of USPs, some FAQs, a little bit of additional context around, Sydney as well. Some of this stuff is probably stretching the limits of what's actually helpful from an SEO perspective on a page like this, I'd argue. A random, Sydney calendar highlight of a few different events throughout the year doesn't really add a lot of context to this page or value for the user, I would argue. But, that's the semantics in the deep end of SEO in any case. Part of what they've got is location strategy, which I also don't love seeing, is these sort of location pages per suburb. There's 550 plus on here as well. They've obviously got an export list of every single suburb in New South Wales. Call this programmatic SEO if you want, if that word's still around. Late through 2024, people are still talking about it. It's obviously an area where you have, arguably slightly templated copy, very much the same. You're ideally pulling in a dynamic range of products that are suitable for that particular location. They've also, again, got FAQs that are pretty much the same across all of these pages, and they just chop and change out the actual location keyword itself. I generally don't love seeing this level of granularity. I agree that it does work where you do actually have search demand and keyword interest in that particular region. But I promise you that these pages would be following an extreme Pareto split 80-20, probably 95-5 in terms of what proportion actually are driving traffic and getting visibility and worth it versus what are providing sort of duplicate and not helpful experiences there. If we take one random example, Darlington Point, this suburb, which as it sounds like it's waterside, is actually out in the bush. Take one example of a car that's for rent on there, this X Trail. Turns out it's actually in this place called Estella, which is 150 kilometers away. So whenever you think about programmatic pages, you always want to clearly define rules and thresholds to say, okay, if we're going to create this page, there has to be a certain number of relevant products or things that are suitable for it within a certain radius that makes it something that a user would actually want to go and purchase from or do within that location, rather than just a catch-all to expand out to wherever the nearest match for that particular origin is. Looking at those pages, again, if we filter down to this particular path that they're all located under, You can see some of those more niche location-based keywords. So Blacktown, Sutherland Shire, Manly, Northern Beaches, Bondi, Chatswood. Again, they all rank sort of, middle of page one for those type of keywords. So again, it's not a strategy that doesn't work. I don't believe they need 500 pages for every single suburb in New South Wales. They could probably get away with the top 50 and still get the same level of traffic and a much cleaner and easier site to manage. But that's just the way I approach and think about things. They've obviously got also the other split really is utes and vans for the same sort of things that people are searching for. Again, same structure, same keywords, same programmatic approach as well. So you do get a lot of, that duplication in pages for where they've built out the same structure. Again, you get to a very big site there when you've got, another few hundred pages per state, per suburb. Moving on to Turo, which is a new, competitor in the market. They're a lot bigger in the US. They obviously launched initially over there and have moved to Australia recently. They're doing quite well over the last year or so. That's a pretty steady growth in traffic. Taking a quick look at what are some of the keywords driving that. Something that stands out to me initially as a bit of an interesting approach is these road trip sort of keywords. If we filter down to them, we can see bang, bang, 11111. They're top of rankings for all of these keywords. If you think about Australia as a big country, there's a lot of locations and a lot of different combinations of where you can drive to or from. There's a lot of content opportunity in this space. If you add up all of these terms, hundreds, 50s, 200s plus searches a month, substantial amount of opportunity here. They've got quite well-written content and it deserves to rank in number one, in my opinion. Again, drive times based on routes that you take, some general, tips about driving. Petrol station and EV chargers is something interesting. I think that'd be a great enhancement to this. Obviously, it'd take a lot of work, but building out some sort of interactive map in terms of showing where those actual EV chargers are, because that's obviously one of the main issues with people being concerned about taking electric vehicles interstate or on long road trips. Again, then you get to all of the details around where to stop, what's the ideal itinerary, how many days you want to take, where you're going to drive on this particular day. So again, a very good piece of content and something that definitely deserves to rank in number one for Sydney to Adelaide road trip. From a structural perspective, again, in filtering down to these sort of rental, hire keywords, Turo's got the same sort of approach, targeting those location-based keywords, Brisbane, Gold Coast, car hire, car rental, etc. Something that's interesting as well that I do want to flag in this case is that with Car Hire Brisbane, for example, what you can see is this competition or cannibalization between the site where you've got a page for Brisbane and you've got a page for Brisbane City, and Google's chopping and changing between and not really knowing which one to pick. So they're both languishing down on page 4, page 7 or so, instead of actually being higher up and where someone's actually going to see that when they're searching for a Car Hire Brisbane. 5,700 searches a month, that's a pretty decent volume. Big opportunity there. So something to be mindful of, again, whenever you do have those programmatic sort of lists of suburbs, locations, regions, you do need to cast an additional lens over that and go, okay, hey, are we actually duplicating some of those core terms? Because anything that's on Brisbane and Brisbane City is likely to be pretty much the same sort of content. Again, you can see that sort of structure on the page. Car Hire Brisbane, you've got the cars, got a little bit of a blurb around, how the process works, some examples, a couple of things to see and do in Brisbane. Again, same sort of stuff that Uber Carshare had on their page as well. Again, some internal linking as well to different particular vehicles that you can hire, different makes, categories and types. Funnily enough, they've got some, SEO focus pages actually tagged as SEO pages here in the code that are just images, not actually the JavaScript linking through to an actual page. So something from a technical perspective that's a little bit strange to see. But in any case, similar structure linking through to, other location-based pages in this area. Some more content, again, linking to the other cities there as well. Part of where I'll wrap up with this, and where if you look at all of these location-based keywords, Car Hire Brisbane, Gold Coast, car rental, Melbourne, there's nothing outstanding there. They're all pretty much stuck on page 3, 4, 5, 6. There's nothing that's showing that they're really doing well. Part of this is you're obviously competing up against the bigger car rental companies and a lot of those legacy ones, your Europe Car, Avis, Budget, all of those sort of car rental companies. You've got the aggregators, you've got booking.com, vroom, 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 kayak. There's more of them popping up every day. Part of this, I believe, is also the local search aspect in terms of, 60 East Coast car rentals, those particular Europe car, the particular rental providers themselves have Google business listings and can see that they're clearly a map location right near this airport or this particular city. It's something that if I do a search for car hire Brisbane, the map pack is going to be at the top of search results. Google knows that people are going to need to go to a physical location to hire or rent a car and pick it up from. So that, I think, is something that probably works against the Turos and the Uber car shares of the world, where they can't actually have a physical Google business profile location in a city, in a region, in a particular state. Again, it's hard to pin down and say that that's exactly why they're struggling to rank for all of these location-based keywords. But it's, the main thing that stands out to me at the moment, looking at the category. Obviously, these sites are big, they've got a lot of backlinks, but Turo and all of that aren't doing too badly either. There is going to be a lot of legacy behavior where Google's probably got 20 years worth of people searching for Europe Car and Hertz and 60 and a lot of those big established car rental companies. So that's definitely a factor as well. But I think, the location element of Google business could be playing into this as well. So interesting space. Uber Carshare leaving. I don't think they're handing over, millions of SEO opportunities to Turo. It is obviously a very competitive landscape with all of the bigger legacy car rental companies. But yeah, I hope you found this interesting. Let me know your thoughts.